Liberal TV host fired over a single sentence. Karoline Leavitt's response? It will shock you. Some moments on live television can never be erased. A single misplaced word, an ill-timed glance, or a brief loss of composure. And just like that, an entire career collapses. That night, millions tuned in, expecting yet another routine political debate. But within minutes, everything spiraled out of control. A seasoned TV host, a man who had grilled politicians for years, made one fatal mistake. He uttered something he never should have. And sitting across from him, none other than Karoline Leavitt, one of the fastest-rising conservative voices in America. At first, it was a heated debate, tough questions, sharp responses. Then the pressure mounted. The host's tone shifted, more aggressive, more pointed. And then it happened. A careless remark. Just 2 words. But powerful enough to shake the entire nation. The studio fell silent. Producers in the control room exchanged stunned glances. Viewers held their breath. But Karoline? She didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply asked, "Would you like to clarify what you mean?" That was it. And from that moment on, there was no way out for him. The clip spread like wildfire across social media. Within hours, hashtags demanding his firing dominated Twitter. Sponsors began pulling their ads. The network? Thrown into crisis mode. By the next morning, the official statement was released. Effective immediately, James Calloway is no longer employed by this network. A decades-long career, dismantled in seconds. But this wasn't just about one host losing his job. No, this was about something far bigger. The power of modern media, the razor-thin line between debate and personal attack, and the irreversible consequences of one unfiltered moment on live TV. So, what exactly was said that changed everything? Was this a justified consequence? Or just another example of cancel culture going too far? Let's uncover the full story right now. The media's failed attempt to corner Karoline on immigration. They had tried and failed to pin her down on immigration. But they weren't done yet. James from the Washington Post leaned in, flipping through his notes. Karoline, the president has made it clear that Palestinians have no choice but to leave Gaza. But they say this is their home. How does the administration justify this? Karoline remained composed, her sharp gaze scanning the room. The president's goal is simple, she replied. Rebuild Gaza, ensure peace, and prevent another war. She paused just slightly. Then leaning in, she continued. But let's be honest. The media keeps asking what Trump is doing, but never asks why Gaza is in ruins in the first place. A few reporters stiffened. Why is Gaza unlivable today? She asked, letting the silence stretch. Then, with measured clarity, because Hamas, a terrorist group backed by Iran, launched a brutal attack on Israel. They slaughtered civilians, took hostages, and used Palestinians as human shields. Peter from CNN jumped in. But Karoline, are you saying Trump bears no responsibility for this crisis? Karoline let out a quiet chuckle, shaking her head. I'm saying Hamas started this war, she stated. But instead of demanding that Hamas surrender, the media is demanding that Trump explain his response. She let that sink in. A young MSNBC reporter pushed forward. But Karoline, Palestinians say they don't want to leave Gaza. Is the U.S. prepared to force them out? Karoline met her gaze. No, she said firmly. The U.S. is not forcing anyone out. We are prepared to help rebuild, but we will not allow another Hamas-controlled war zone to emerge. James from the Washington Post pounced. The president said he's willing to use the military if necessary. Does that mean U.S. troops will be deployed? Karoline leaned forward slightly, her voice steady. The president has not committed to U.S. boots on the ground, she clarified. But he's keeping all options open because when it comes to national security, he won't play political games. Some reporters looked dissatisfied. They wanted a reckless statement. She didn't give them one. She let a moment pass. Then, scanning the room, she posed a question of her own. The real question is, why aren't you asking Hamas to surrender? Silence. A flicker of discomfort crossed James's face. Another journalist from NPR tried to redirect. But Karoline, There are concerns that Trump's stance on Gaza will escalate tensions with key allies. What is the administration doing to prevent further instability? Karoline exhaled slightly, as if she had been waiting for this question all along. The president has already spoken with Egypt, Jordan, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia, she revealed. We're coordinating with our allies to ensure regional stability. She folded her hands. But the media keeps pretending that Trump is making rash, unilateral decisions. A few reporters looked down at their notes. Others typed away, already spinning their stories. Karoline checked the time. With a knowing smile, she said simply, "Next question." When facts don't work, they turn to misrepresentation. The media had failed to trap Karoline on Gaza. But they weren't done yet. If they couldn't win with facts, they'd try something else. Misrepresentation. Peter from CNN adjusted his mic, ready to strike. Karoline, CNN is reporting that you suggested illegal immigrants aren't deserving of humane treatment. Do you stand by that? Karoline's brow lifted slightly. She knew where this was going. Peter, she said calmly, would you mind reading exactly what I said? Peter hesitated. He glanced at his notes, then back at her. Well, in context. No. Karoline cut him off smoothly. I asked for exactly what I said, not your interpretation. Silence. Peter cleared his throat. I don't have the direct quote in front of me, he admitted. Karoline smirked. Of course you don't. She tapped on her iPad, pulling up the transcript herself. Allow me to help, she said, turning the screen toward the cameras. She read aloud. I said, illegal immigration is a national security crisis, and the Biden administration's policies have made it worse. She looked up. Now, Peter, where exactly did I say anything about immigrants not deserving humane treatment? Peter's jaw tightened. Well, the implication was. Karoline held up a hand. No, Peter. CNN didn't report what I said. You twisted it. A ripple of murmurs spread through the press room. She wasn't done yet. This is exactly what the media does, she continued. You don't like what I actually said, so you invent a version that fits your narrative. James from the Washington Post tried to jump in. Karoline, even if the wording was misinterpreted, don't you think? Karoline cut him off, flipping her screen to a new tab. Let's talk about misinterpretation, James. She tapped on an article headline from MSNBC. It read, Karoline Leavitt refuses to deny Trump will use U.S. troops to remove Palestinians. Karoline looked around the room. Raise your hand if you were here when I answered that question. A few journalists hesitated before slowly raising their hands. Karoline leaned forward. Did I say that Trump would use the military to remove Palestinians? Silence. Anyone, she pressed. More silence. She tilted her head. Because what I actually said was, and I quote, the president has not committed to U.S. boots on the ground but is keeping all options open to maintain stability. She let the words sink in. But MSNBC decided to rewrite reality. And now, Twitter is filled with people believing a completely false headline. A young MSNBC reporter shifted in his seat. Karoline, that headline is just an interpretation of... Karoline laughed lightly, shaking her head. Interpretation, she repeated. No. That's called a lie. She scanned the room. This is how it works, she said. The media creates a false story, spreads it across every platform, and hopes people never fact-check it. She glanced at the cameras. And if you don't believe me, just wait until tonight's news coverage. A few journalists looked uncomfortable. Others were already rewriting their narratives. Karoline checked the time. With a knowing smile, she said simply, Next question.